The sky over Montana was steel gray when 14-year-old Mason Wilson felt his father's eyes burning into him across the breakfast table. Mark Wilson's jaw tightened as he folded the newspaper with deliberate slowness. "Pack your bags," he said, voice clipped colder than the morning air seeping through the cabin windows. "We're leaving early." Mason's stomach nodded. They were supposed to visit his grandmother in Whitefish that afternoon. Not at dawn. Through the doorway, he spotted his father's duffel bag stuffed with adult clothes and envelopes of cash. No winter jackets for the kids, no books, just his father's possessions. 10-year-old Sophie stumbled into the kitchen in her pajamas, clutching a worn teddy bear with distinctive red stitching on its right paw. "Are we really going to Grandma's?" she asked, her small voice cutting through the tension. "Of course," Mark muttered without meeting her eyes. Vanessa, Mason's stepmother, exhaled cigarette smoke by the window, trembling fingers betraying her nervousness. She hadn't looked at either child since yesterday, when she'd discovered Mason's text messages to a boy named Alex from school. By the time they piled into the old Ford pickup, mist was rolling through the pines. Mason watched familiar landmarks disappear as they drove deeper into unfamiliar territory. "Dad, this isn't the road to Grandma's," he ventured carefully. "I know what I'm doing," Mark snapped, knuckles white against the steering wheel. Hours passed as paved road became dirt, then mud, then barely visible tire tracks winding deeper into wilderness. Sophie pressed her face against the window, watching towering spruces blur past like silent sentinels. Without warning, the truck slowed on a narrow forest path surrounded by ancient pines. Mark killed the engine. "Out," he commanded. Mason blinked in confusion. "What?" Mark grabbed a small grocery bag containing crackers and water, tossing it onto the ground beside the truck. "Stay here. I'll be right back." Mason's throat tightened. "Dad, please. Why are you taking your bag?" Mark froze momentarily, then slammed the door. Vanessa stared straight ahead, refusing to acknowledge what was happening. The engine roared back to life, and before Mason could react, the truck reversed, turned, and vanished down the muddy path. "Daddy!" Sophie screamed, chasing after the disappearing vehicle until she tripped, falling to her knees in the cold mud. "He forgot us! Mason, he forgot us!" Mason stood frozen, the cruel realization washing over him. His father hadn't forgotten them. He'd deliberately abandoned them because of who Mason was. Snow began to fall in thin, biting flakes. Mason pulled his sister close, wiping mud from her trembling hands. "We'll be okay," he lied, his own voice betraying him with a crack. Sophie clutched her teddy bear tighter. "Mom said he protects us," she whispered. Mason forced a smile despite chattering teeth, remembering his late mother's words. "The bear will always lead you to where you're meant to be." What would happen to these children abandoned in the wilderness? Would anyone find them before the deadly Montana winter claimed them? Follow Heart Stories to discover how cruel rejection sometimes leads to the most unexpected acceptance. In places where love speaks louder than blood, Mason and Sophie walked for hours, following what they thought was the truck's path, but snow quickly erased all traces. When darkness fell, Mason found shelter beneath a fallen pine, brushing away frost to create a small haven. He spread his jacket on the ground and tucked Sophie beneath it, his own body shivering in just a thin shirt. "Are we going to die?" Sophie whispered, tears freezing on her cheeks. "Not if I can help it," Mason replied, though his voice trembled with uncertainty. As Sophie drifted into uneasy sleep, Mason stared at the darkening sky, finally allowing silent tears to fall. The wilderness seemed to echo his inner turmoil, exposed, vulnerable, rejected. His mind flashed to school hallways where whispers followed him. "Fairy," they'd mutter when he passed. "Sissy." He'd trained himself not to react, but each word had carved something from him. Now his father had carved away the last pretense of belonging. He thought of Jamie Winters, the openly gay seigneur who'd found Mason hiding in the bathroom after particularly brutal taunts. Jamie had sat beside him, not offering empty comfort, but simple solidarity. They fear what they don't understand, Jamie had said. But there's nothing wrong with you. Mason had clung to those words on his darkest days. Now, in actual darkness, he wondered if Jamie had been wrong. If he were normal, would his father have abandoned them in these woods? Would Sophie be freezing because of him? Morning arrived with bitter cold and fresh snow. Mason woke with his arms numb from holding Sophie all night. "We need to move," he urged, helping her stand on stiff legs. They trudged through knee-deep snow, their breath rising like spectral shapes. Hours passed with the forest looking identical in every direction. Endless pines, dead leaves, crushing silence. Mason tried remembering landmarks, but everything blurred together in white disorientation. Sophie suddenly stopped, pointing through the trees. "Mason, look." Through the dense fog, a thin ribbon of smoke rose skyward. Mason's heart leaped. Smoke meant fire. Fire meant people. They struggled toward it, branches slapping their faces, hope driving their frozen limbs. The smoke led them through a natural clearing where sunlight momentarily broke through clouds, casting a rainbow through ice crystals hanging from branches. Mason paused, transfixed by the prism of colors, nature's own pride flag beckoning them forward. The smoke thickened as a small log cabin materialized through the trees, half hidden behind snow-dusted firs. Mason hesitated. His mother had warned about strangers, but the alternative was freezing to death. Gathering his courage, he knocked on the weathered door with frozen knuckles. After a painfully long moment, the door creaked open. A tall man with silver hair and a neatly trimmed beard stood silhouetted against warm light, holding a steaming kettle. His piercing blue eyes widened at the sight of two freezing children on his doorstep. "Lord above," he murmured, "where did you two come from?" Mason's lips barely moved from cold. "We got lost." The man studied them briefly before opening the door wider. "Get inside before you freeze." They stepped into blessed warmth as the cabin's heat enveloped them like a forgotten embrace. The stranger took their wet coats, wrapped them in thick wool blankets, and pressed mugs of hot chocolate into their trembling hands. "I'm Joshua Gray," he said gently. "Folks around here call me Josh." Mason managed a weak reply. "I'm Mason. This is my sister. Sophie?" Joshua nodded solemnly. "You're safe now." The cabin's interior was a testament to decades of solitary living. Handcrafted furniture, books lining every wall, and small touches that spoke of a life deliberately crafted away from judgment. Mason noticed details others might miss: a faded rainbow flag folded carefully on a bookshelf, black and white photographs of protests from the 1970s, books with titles like Stonewall and The Mayor of Castro Street. As Joshua ladled homemade vegetable soup into earthenware bowls, Mason cautiously studied the man who had taken them in. Joshua moved with this quiet efficiency of someone accustomed to self-reliance. His cabin was immaculate yet lived in, with evidence of woodworking projects and a half-finished painting of a San Francisco street scene. "Your truck broke down?" Joshua asked, his tone suggesting he already suspected the truth. Mason swallowed hard. "Yes," he lied. "Dad went for help. He hasn't come back yet." Joshua's eyes softened, but something in them, recognition, perhaps, suggested he understood more than Mason realized. Sophie finished her soup and crept closer to the crackling fire, holding her teddy bear toward the warmth. "His name's Mr. Teddy," she announced proudly. "He's special. Mom made him." Joshua smiled gently until his gaze caught the distinctive red stitching on the bear's right paw. His expression changed dramatically, hand trembling as he reached out. "May I see him?" Sophie hesitated before nodding. Joshua turned the teddy bear over in his weathered hands, tracing the uneven red stitches with a reverence that seemed almost holy. "Where did your mother get this?" he asked, voice suddenly rough. "It was hers when she was little." Mason explained, watching Joshua's reaction carefully. "She said someone special made it for her." Joshua stared into the fire, emotions playing across his face like shadows. "What was her name?" he finally asked. "Rachel Wilson," Mason replied. "She died 2 years ago." The name struck Joshua visibly. He turned away, pretending to stir the fire while discreetly wiping his eyes. That night, while the children slept by the fireplace, Mason wasn't entirely asleep. Through half-closed eyes, he watched Joshua sitting in an old wooden chair, holding Sophie's teddy bear, and whispering, "Rachel, are these your children?" The tenderness in the old man's voice made Mason's chest tighten with questions he wasn't yet brave enough to ask. Morning brought oatmeal sweetened with honey and warm conversation. Joshua showed Mason how to chop wood, his instructions gentle but precise. "You've got strong hands," Joshua observed. Mason smiled shyly. "Mom used to say I got them from someone important she once knew." Joshua paused mid-swing, something unreadable crossing his features. Later, exploring the cabin while Joshua taught Sophie how to identify bird calls, Mason discovered a hidden photograph tucked inside a poetry book. Two young men standing close together outside a San Francisco bookstore, arms around each other's shoulders. One was unmistakably a younger Joshua. The other bore a striking resemblance to Mason himself. Most remarkable was a newspaper clipping dated June 28, 1978, showing Joshua among protesters at what appeared to be a pride parade. The headline read, "Stonewall Anniversary Marked by Calls for Equality." Awesome. Mason's fingers traced the image, a strange sense of connection forming. This man had fought battles Mason was only beginning to understand. He slipped the clipping back exactly as he'd found it, pieces of a puzzle slowly coming together in his mind. In the kitchen, he heard Joshua humming his mother's favorite lullaby, the one she'd always claimed was from someone who understood what it meant to love completely. Days passed in comfortable routine until the sound of an engine broke the silence. A county sheriff's vehicle pulled up, followed by a woman in a professional tan coat stepping out. Sarah Martinez, a social worker from Pinecrest County. "Mr. Gray," she called, approaching the cabin. "We received reports of children in this area." Joshua nodded solemnly, inviting her inside where Mason and Sophie sat nervously by the fire. Sarah knelt before them, her manner gentle but professional as she asked about their parents and how they'd found themselves in Joshua's care. Mason repeated his story about their truck breaking down, but Sarah's experienced eyes saw through the tale. "Mason," she said softly, "we found your father's truck in Kalispell. He and your stepmother have been arrested for child abandonment and financial fraud." The truth hung heavy in the cabin air. Sarah continued, "They've admitted to leaving you in the forest. Your father made some disturbing statements about his reasons." Mason's cheeks burned with shame, knowing exactly what those reasons were. Sarah and Joshua exchanged a meaningful look that Mason couldn't decipher. Later, when Sophie was napping, he overheard them talking in hushed tones. "I recognize you from the Rainbow Cabins Network," Sarah said. "You were at the foundation meeting in Portland last year." Joshua nodded. "We've placed 17 kids in safe homes since then." Mason realized they were discussing some kind of underground network helping LGBT youth who'd been rejected by their families. The knowledge that Joshua was part of such a community made Mason's heart race. Perhaps he had found someone who truly understood. The following morning brought officials collecting DNA samples, standard procedure for determining guardianship when abandonment occurred. Mason noticed Joshua's hands trembling slightly as he submitted his sample. 3 days later, Sarah returned with an official-looking folder. "We have the DNA results," she announced, her expression a mixture of professional calm and genuine amazement. "Mr. Gray, you share a 25% DNA match with Mason. According to our records, you are his biological grandfather." The revelation struck like lightning. Joshua sat heavily in his chair as Sarah explained what they'd pieced together. Robert Matthews, Joshua's former partner from the 1970s, had married a woman named Catherine after their relationship ended. Their daughter was Rachel, Mason's mother. Joshua had never known Robert had a child, much less a grandchild. Robert had died years ago, taking the secret with him. But the genetic connection was undeniable. Mason stood frozen, his world reconfiguring around this new reality. The grandfather he never knew he had was a gay man who'd fought for rights Mason was only beginning to understand. That night, Joshua showed Mason a small wooden box containing memories, letters, photographs, and a journal Robert had kept during their years together. "We loved each other during a time when such love was considered criminal," Joshua explained, his voice steady but pained. "When pressure became too great, Robert left. I never blamed him. Survival sometimes meant compromise." Among the mementos was a letter from Rachel dated shortly before her death, undelivered but preserved. "I always knew who you were from Dad's stories. If anything happens to me, the bear will lead my children to you. Mason is special. Like you. He'll need someone who understands." Mason's hands trembled as he processed his mother's words. She had known about him, had recognized something in him long before he had found words for it himself. And rather than rejection, she had prepared a path toward acceptance. He thought of his father's disgust, his classmates' cruelty, all the times he'd felt fundamentally wrong. And here was evidence that his mother had loved him completely, had wanted him to find his way to someone who would understand rather than judge. The realization broke something open inside him, grief for what he'd lost, but also profound relief that perhaps he wasn't broken after all. Spring brought transformation to the Montana wilderness, snow melting to reveal tender green beneath. Inside Joshua's cabin, an equally profound rebirth was underway. The court had granted Joshua full guardianship of both Mason and Sophie, creating a family bonded not just by blood, but by chosen love. The cabin expanded literally and figuratively. Joshua added a second bedroom and officially registered his home as part of the Rainbow Cabins network, a safe haven for LGBT youth rejected by their families. Mason found himself stepping into unexpected purpose. When a shy 14-year-old named Tyler arrived after his parents discovered his journal entries about another boy, Mason recognized his own pain reflected in the newcomer's eyes. "The first night is the hardest," Mason told him, sharing hot chocolate by the fire. "But you're not alone anymore." Their friendship blossomed gradually into tender first love, nurtured by Joshua's gentle guidance on healthy relationships built on mutual respect. The cabin's transformation attracted attention from the nearest town. Some residents were suspicious, but Sarah organized educational sessions for parents and teachers. "Rejection doesn't change who children are," she explained. "It only changes where they feel safe." Slowly, understanding grew. A local carpenter volunteered to help build additional sleeping quarters. The diner owner sent weekly food baskets. A retired teacher offered tutoring. What began as one man's solitary existence evolved into a community of acceptance. On Mason's 15th birthday, Joshua presented him with his mother's journal. Inside, Rachel had written, "I've always known Mason would forge his own path. Mark calls it defiance. I call it courage. If Mason someday reads this, know I recognize your beautiful spirit from the first moment. I never had the courage to stand against your father, but I made sure the bear would guide you home if needed." Mason wept then, not from sorrow, but from the profound recognition that he had always been loved for exactly who he was. 1 year after their abandonment in the forest, Mason organized a small pride celebration at the cabin. Teenagers from 3 counties attended, some still living with families struggling to understand them, others finding temporary shelter in the network Joshua had helped create. They shared stories around a bonfire, each narrative a thread in a tapestry of resilience. Mason stood beside Joshua, watching Sophie decorate Mr. Teddy with a tiny rainbow flag for the occasion. The bear now sat permanently on the mantelpiece, its red-stitched paw a reminder of the unexpected ways love finds its path home. That evening, Mason placed a letter he'd written into a wooden box for future residents of the bear's home, as they now called the cabin. "Sometimes family is who gives you life," he wrote. "Sometimes it's who saves it. The world may try to make you believe you're lost in the wilderness, but there are always smoke signals from those who've built fires of acceptance. Follow them home. What unexpected paths have led you to the family who truly sees you? Has rejection ever guided you toward deeper acceptance? If Mason's journey resonates with you, share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to Heart Stories for more real experiences that remind us how love finds its way, even through the darkest forests.